Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of An Unconventional Guide to Success. Scott and I are excited for this season and hope you will truly enjoy our incredible lineup of guests who will share their stories and help us as we continue to explore concepts and discuss real-life examples showing that the path isn't linear and that the journey to success is self-defined. My name is Linda Misegadis.
And I'm Scott Montgomery.
And we will be your guides. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this new episode of An Unconventional Guide to Success. I'm excited to have my partner in crime here, Scott Montgomery. How are you, Scott?
I'm good, Linda. How are you
I'm
for a
doing
Friday?
good. I know. I can't believe it. I'm so glad it's Friday. So it's been a long week. Sure. And
it has, but we're going to end it on a good note today. I'm really excited about our guest.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
It's so great. LaToya and I go way back, got to work together at the City and County of Denver, and I'm just so excited to have her here in the studio today. But let me introduce everyone to LaToya. LaToya began her human resources career in the private sector, actually. And after several years, she really continued her career in the public sector, which is where I met her at City and County of Denver. And she supported three of our largest departments, really worked to create and implement workforce and recruitment strategies and diversity, inclusion, employee engagement, and development. And then LaToya joined Colorado Public Radio in 2021 as the Senior Vice President of People and Culture. And at CPR, LaToya oversees the human resources staff and focus areas, really focusing in on strategy and implementation, sustainability for the organization's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. LaToya is a Colorado native like myself. She grew up in Park Hill area and is really a results-focused leader. And I experienced that working with LaToya. I got the chance to watch her grow into her career, and it's just been amazing to see the incredible she's continued to do on her journey. So you just got over 20 years of human experience. That is the whole human resources side of it. So, but we're so excited to have you here, LaToya. So welcome to the studio.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, welcome.
Good. Well, hey, we'll jump right in. Scott, I always like to ask a bunch of questions that Scott thinks. I don't know what he thinks. Maybe he likes to jump right into the interview.
I'm going to jump right in, then I'll start. I'll kick us off, Linda.
Yeah, no,
I always like to do a little PR on the book.
Yeah,
how did you get here?
Shameless plug. Yeah,
exactly.
I just published this book, LaToya. I hope you get a chance to read it. And I'll be sure to send you a copy if you hadn't.
Awesome. Okay.
But one of the things that we like to do is guide our conversations around some of what happened in this book and what we're talking about. The first chapter is about partnerships. First two chapters are about partnerships and relationships in business. So to that end, clearly you and Linda go way back, and those are important things for your career as well. One of our first areas of interest is who might be the three most important or influential people in your career path that you might want to talk about with us today.
Oh, yeah. So, a couple people that I come to mind. First, I would say may not be career related, but definitely my grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I've always been a person that likes to watch people, and so I used to always watch her. And one of the things I remember about my grandmother is she could walk in the room and you could just feel her presence and strength without her saying a thing. And I think a lot of people respected her because of her presence. Very ambitious, had a lot of grit, but on the other side, very sophisticated with a lot of grace. So I thought it was a very good balance. Yeah, so that's one definitely that I would say. Another personal to me, I think, is my dad. My dad, for me, balances out the love. And when I think of my dad, I think of love. I think he is the individual for me that really showed me what it looks like in a true way to love and have compassion for others. And also, he was the first person to, I think, court and woo me as a male figure in my life. I just remember back surprises for picnics between him and I at the park, and Valentine's Day, I would always get flowers and cards when I was little from him, and just having just fun and excitement, but also just him having an overwhelming support for me and also being so
Mm.
very proud of what I was doing. And I think that really um, pushed me to make sure that I was pushing myself, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So those
Totally.
are three. And the third one I will mention, and I'm not sure if she knows this, and I really may have to contact this professor after this. I had a professor named by the name of Peachtree.
Oh,
Prudence Petrie.
wow.
And she was impactful to me as a professional because she was the first one that jolted me and made me get my stuff together. There was a time and period
Wonderful.
when I was a teenager, and I would always show up and do my work, but I was not fully invested at a period of time. And she had a what I call a crucial conversation with me. I broke, you know, typical teenager. I broke down crying, but to this day, I remember every word that she said.
Wow.
She did it with compassion, but she was very
Good.
serious about what she relayed to me, and it definitely put me back on the right track. And so I think those type of individuals are the ones that tell you the truth, can tell you the
Mhm.
truth with respect and compassion, but also just tell you that truth that gets you back on track. And I appreciate that.
Well, that's so important. And one of the things I think is really important. One of the reasons I wrote my book the way I did is to talk to that next generation and those people who are in that critical intersection that I too found myself in. And I wrote about the same people who maybe gave me that consequences
Yeah.
conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's nice to hear you talk about that because I think people don't talk about that enough. So again, welcome to our podcast, and getting to the heart of it is going to be so critical and important for our viewers. And really nice to hear that you take it all the way back to your grandmother. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, isn't it so
And
funny how relationships, they all start back on that personal level, which is what we
Yeah.
talk about a lot is, where does it really begin? And sometimes it is maybe you're fortunate enough with your parents, your grandparents, or maybe a sibling. And then sometimes it's just, it could be a childhood friend or someone who has that kind of impact. But it seems like it
Yeah.
does kind of always start with those influential people at a personal level that really help us understand the real value of relationships, I think.
I agree. I think also if you pay attention, you could get something from everyone. You
Yeah.
just you just have to pay attention, whether it's positive, negative, you're gaining something from someone that can be helpful for you in your next step in your life.
Yeah.
So I think I try to do that as much as possible.
Totally agree.
So
That makes a
yeah.
lot of sense. What made you decide like to head down the path of human resources, particularly, in that route? Because a lot of people I know in my experience, like for me, my focus was more on the payroll side of the house,
Hmm.
but you a lot of times you'll hear, well, I just accidentally, but you didn't accidentally fall into human resources. You set a path towards going into human resources. So why did you choose that direction?
Well, to be honest, Linda, I feel like when I started out, I kind of did fall into
Yeah.
to HR. Yes,
Yeah.
it started really early for me, where I was working at a movie company, and every component of the duties and responsibilities that they would give me was somehow be connected to personnel management or HR.
Mm.
And so I didn't consciously realize it at that point,
Yeah.
but as every role from that point really connected to those type of experiences. And I think it was really when I was under your wing in payroll, and we were doing a centralized component of payroll and HR, that I really found like, yeah, that's really where I want to go. So it was
Yeah.
actually there that I really started to realize that's really the path I want to take.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
neat. I didn't realize that. And that's well, and that was a big part of that was a component of that role. You're right, is we had to spend so much time. It was a very large effort, and it was all about relationships there too, right? We had to go out and develop relationships with all the different agencies and department heads and employees because it was such a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
But the way that we were successful was through the relationships each of you developed and being able to build that trust, I think, so that people recognize that, yes, this was a big change, but they could trust that we were thinking about them and that we were taking their interests into. So,
I
Yeah.
think the networking component of relationships and, like you said, the social capital aspect of your careers I love that we're going right there,
Yeah.
because I think that's really the foundation. So many people separate business and humanity, and
Yeah.
that's really not
Mm.
what is
Mm.
you're going to find in success.
That is
You
so
know,
true.
it's about your parents, it's about your coworkers, it's about relationships. I think that's the capstone to a lot of successful people.
Mhm.
And I'm glad to hear you talk about that, LaToya. It's really important. I
Absolutely.
didn't realize you guys had such history and all of that too. That's great.
Well,
We
and it was
do,
through
we
your
do.
network too, right, LaToya, that you ended up over at Colorado Public Radio. So, it
Yeah.
was again through those connections that you had developed that I think you were sharing with me that that one of your friends, colleagues reached out to you about this opportunity over here at CPR.
Yeah, I do want to highlight, the city for a minute, because I think working for the city and having so many diverse businesses and organizations
Yeah.
and people within also broadens the opportunities that you may have inside the city and also
Right.
outside, right? And so it was at the city that I think I grew significantly in building different types of relationships, and it was another leader at the city that had left the city, but kept me in the back of her mind, and also kind of brought this opportunity at CPR to my attention. So definitely that connection from the city, and also her seeing me do the work and me
Mhm.
working with her, I think also helped to hopefully keep me in the back of her mind, which led to this great opportunity that I'm in today. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes
Isn't that
sense.
funny that isn't it funny that who you know begets what you know? I had
Yes.
found that as well,
Yeah.
that you want to honor the opportunity by maybe learning something new and being more productive in a way you never thought you could be challenged by.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to kind of falling into your career a little bit, but not really, because we all did that. I know my mentors, or why I got into technology at all, is because I appreciated those people. And then I learned how to do it
Yes.
in honor of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
it's very
also
true.
Yeah.
valuing and respecting the people that you run into, because you just never know what connection that relationship may bring you down the line.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think
That's
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 right.
so
important
important.
too.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you're absolutely
Say that
right.
again out loud, because
Yeah.
I agree 100%. You never know. You never burn a bridge. And Linda and I've talked about that. We
Yeah.
both have burned one bridge in our
Yes. Yeah.
careers, and
Okay,
it was
we all have.
intentional,
Yep.
and it was
Right.
right to the ground.
That's it. That's it. Because you never know. So
Sometimes you have to go there, but yeah.
yeah, but you also never know when
Yeah.
you might have to cross it again. And so it has
Yeah.
to
Right.
be a very thoughtful, conscious choice if you decide that it is a bridge you're going to burn, to know that it's probably burned forever, because it is such a small community, and it's
Mhm.
amazing, and especially I think in the world of social media now and social capital, because you can't, it's a little harder to hide necessarily, because
Yeah.
once you're out there, there's somebody who knew you type of thing. And so
Yes.
that's, I think,
Yes.
why the criticality of those relationships really kind of come into play with long-term success. Along those lines, what are your thoughts, kind of like along mentorship and coaching? So would you look back in your career and say like that there were some important mentors that you had in your life, or did you ever seek out any type of formal coaching throughout your career?
Yeah, I will say I did have a opportunity to have an executive coach for a period of time, and that was a valuable experience for me. I will unfortunately have to say I don't remember having a dedicated mentor. I
Okay,
don't think,
yeah,
as I saw that question, I thought back, and I think I just, until, just very recently, really didn't believe I had the space to ask someone to take and dedicate time to be a one-on-one mentor to me.
interesting.
And yeah, I thought that was interesting as I said it out loud too. But I
Yeah,
think,
Yeah.
it's more me saying that out loud makes me feel like it's even more valuable and important for me to make sure that others recognize and
Yes.
take advantage of it, right?
yeah,
I don't know
Wonderful.
if I just didn't, I didn't have the courage to ask for it. I've always been mindful of other people's time, and
yeah,
maybe just didn't put it out there and ask for them to make the space for it.
sure,
Um, but so I may have not had a dedicated mentor, but I will
yeah,
say there were many leaders in my life including you, Linda,
Oh,
who I remember just interacting with and reporting to. And, even with the work, I think for me, a lot of the leaders that I think about from a mentor perspective just took the time to have conversations. I don't remember all the
yeah,
conversations.
yeah.
And it reminds me of the quote. I think people may not remember what you do, but they'll remember how you make them feel.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a Maya Angelou quote, isn't it? Yeah, I think so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that is what I remember. And, I think for me as a woman, I had a lot of strong women leaders in my life that I felt like were mentors to me.
Yeah.
Whether we were just talking about a process or a dynamic in the organization, just having the time to sit down with them and hear and pick their brain, I think was just valuable for me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I relate to that.
Talk about your experience with executive coaching, like, because there's a lot of mixed feelings of people around the whole around whether the value and what you, because I think you only get out of coaching what you put into it, which is just like anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you've played
Mm-hmm.
sports or done anything, coaching is really something where you have to put something into it. It's, not like just because somebody's there that suddenly everything, now you've got it all figured out or something. You got to actually put some effort.
Yeah, and so I think when I sought the executive coaching out, it was more because in the human resource world, that's an avenue that we can offer to leaders, employees, staff. I don't believe at offering executive coaching for corrective action
Yeah.
fully. I think it should be a positive experience, but to offer it, I needed to know what it was about. So how can I
Okay.
offer something to somebody else that I haven't even
Yeah.
engaged in myself? So that was really kind of what my thought process was. Um, and for me, I think, it was valuable. I think executive coaching and coaching to me is really asking questions to help people get to their own resolution or answer.
Yeah.
And not only was that helpful for me in my career, but it was helpful for me to always be more self-aware of myself and also analyze myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
in situations. Sometimes we can get in situations, whether it be heated situations or normal situations, and assume things and not necessarily really understand how we showed up in that situation
Yeah.
ourselves to kind of contribute.
Mhm.
And I think those are two of the biggest components that I got out of the executive coaching class. That was not only helpful for me, but also how do I apply that to help others? And
Yeah.
because HR is a lot of coaching too.
It
If
is
you're,
a lot of coaching. Yeah. Yep.
um, so I think it was definitely valuable. I think it could be used in a lot of different ways. Um, a lot of leaders and peers that I know, they have a dedicated reason why they want to go to executive coaching, which is okay too.
Right.
I didn't go into it with a specific agenda,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely feel like I got a lot out of it.
It's great.
Did you go through a certification class, or did you have an executive coach that you were working one-on-one with?
I had a executive coach that I worked directly with.
Yeah,
I
one-on-one.
started down the journey of getting my coaching certification, and I do want to complete that. I haven't yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to do that, but I had a dedicated one-on-one coach. Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's great. I did the certification, and I certified with the International Coaching Federation.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate how you summarize nicely that it's a series of questions that help someone find their best self.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a lot of times there is a discrepancy, misunderstood between coaching and mentor. And I really
Mhm.
appreciate you noting that difference at a very high level. And I would highly recommend you pursue coaching. And just in what we've talked about, you'd be an exceptional coach, I can tell.
Oh,
Oh, well, thank you.
yes, I know for sure she would. Well, and along those lines, so like, what's one piece of advice you'd give someone who is starting out in a career like human resources? Like what would you recommend to people who are thinking about that from an advice perspective?
Mm. There's a lot I want to say about this. I would say first things first. Those that are interested in HR, I would ask or encourage them to come into it with a different lens than what the normal HR is.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, I love my profession, but I also think my profession has some opportunity for growth.
Mhm.
We have been very, um, we have been positioned to be transactional, reactive, and not necessarily valued for the expertise that we bring to the table.
Yeah.
Um, and organizational dynamics can contribute to that, but I also don't feel like we've empowered ourselves to be positioned in the best way sometimes,
Mhm.
to add value not only to the employees, which ultimately adds value to the organization.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so, the lens of owning your expertise, it may sound harsh, but owning your authority in your profession is
Yeah,
important.
I agree.
Um, and coming in with that lens versus, and I'll say it in the example of sometimes we can be in a more consultant advisory,
Mhm.
but if there is something that is not right, and
Yeah.
we know it's not right, that's when the consultation and the advice needs to go to the side, and we need to be a little more authoritative in that
Yeah.
conversation, right? And so,
Hmm.
I truly believe in that, and also how that ties to how we enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion in the organization. I think the two go hand in hand. So that would be one thing. I think the second thing that I would add to that advice I would give is, and when I look back on my experience at the city,
Mhm.
the one thing that I value the most is the opportunity to have my hands in almost everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that was so exciting to me. I mean, we did payroll, we did leave. I remember working with peers to do the implementation of Kronos,
Yeah.
and then getting into HR, and I did leave on that perspective, and then training, onboarding, learning and development. It was just so many things
Yeah.
that I was able to, develop myself in. So many people I got to work with. So take advantage of that. If you are in an
Yeah.
organization, and don't rush to have it.
Yeah.
Take time and really get into it deeply. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
Know those different functions and components of HR, because at my role now, at the level that I'm in, the level that I'm at, all those components have been extremely helpful to me
Yes.
connecting the dots and coming up
Yeah.
with strategies and approaches and helping to support my team. Although I don't think I would have been as successful in this role without those experiences. So
Yeah.
that would be my advice.
No, I love that. When I love what you
Yeah.
just brought up too about because I think you're absolutely right. I've done a couple sessions on that conversation around being more strategic business partners. HR.
Yeah.
Most
Hmm.
people that really have a career in HR have gone to school and generally have a degree, even in some level of psychology, right? Because there's a psychological
Yes.
aspect to even the coaching, mentoring, leadership, all of that. There's that people side of it that all factors into it. And you're right. I think historically, HR had been viewed too tactically. It's just there to process
Yep.
paperwork and get people, like not, yeah,
Terminations and
terminations,
onboarded. Yeah.
Yeah.
onboarding, grievances pop up and now you call in your HR person to handle the paperwork type of situation, but not
Yeah.
Change
really
management
thinking it.
OD. Yeah, would be
Yeah,
helpful.
really having that
That.
seat at the table.
Yes.
Yes. No, I
Yeah.
totally agree. So I love that advice. I think that's really good. And I think owning it to what you just said there too is like having the confidence to go in when that whole thing they say to see something, say something. Well, it kind of fits into that role of HR as well,
Yeah.
because when you
That's why you're
see
there.
that there's a problem or disparity or there are issues around, from behavioral diversity, all of this, it's a responsibility to say something about it, not to just,
Mhm.
think, well, that's not really my job. I can't, or I don't have the authority to speak up type of thing. So
And the leadership needs to be coached into that too. The leadership
totally
Yes.
needs to
agree.
embrace that organization. It's hard. It's hard if they don't, and it leads to then feeling like coaching is a reactive thing
Yeah.
for reprimand and for correction
Yeah.
versus growth and learning and continual learning.
I
Right.
totally
So
Yeah.
agree.
I hear you loud and clear on that, and I think as a business owner myself, I often try to apply some of that OD change management work on my
Yeah.
teams as they're
Yeah.
evolving and developing. partnership we have with Kronos today, for example. I'm working those kind of functions in as we revamp the team, because later they become reactive instead of proactive.
There you go.
Those are your words. Yeah, exactly.
No, I
And,
totally
I
I'll
agree.
add to
I totally
that,
agree.
something that definitely helped me too is process improvement and
yeah.
understanding that change management, you mentioned that, Scott, and process improvement, and also being familiar with using data to help drive decisions too. Um,
Yes, yeah.
those three things together, along with you having your ear to the ground with the people, I mean, that's all you need
Yeah.
there. That's the
Yes.
golden package right there. And so,
Plus the partnerships and relationships. Don't forget that piece. It's such a
yes,
Yeah.
critical piece.
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
And
It's so
I
true.
also say I feel like HR has a lot of project management components in there. So
Yeah.
people getting into HR career don't feel like you have to take the standard approach to your education
Right.
or experience with, just doing HR education or
Yeah.
whatnot. Branch out into process improvement, project management, change
Mhm.
management.
Yeah.
All those things are going to be vital in how you do your job on a day-to-day basis too.
No.
So important you say that, boy. Like, highlight this stuff. Thank you for your contributions. That's great.
Yeah. No,
Yes.
I totally
I
agree.
agree. That's awesome.
So,
Yeah.
LaToya, my guess is that you probably have to, especially in your role, is to think about how do you apply goals and habits to really kind of be effective in what you're doing. So, talk a little bit about your process to, establish what are those goals and habits, and how does that factor into then creating that balance for you for self care as well. So, you've obviously got the work side of it, but then how do you balance that out from a self-care perspective as well?
To be working in peak performance,
Yeah.
which clearly you are. So yeah, that's a combination that a lot of people would benefit from your sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it starts out with first things first as a leader. And I'll say this, I never really strived to be a leader. Leader is a hard job,
Yes, it
and you
is.
are
Yeah.
responsible for creating an experience for people under you, and you can either make or break that.
Yeah.
So I take it very seriously. But I say that to say it starts with me understanding what type of leader I want to be. Um, Based off of my experiences, what worked well for me, what didn't work well, and how do
Yeah.
I want to show up for my team and the others around me. Um, I am from an organizational standpoint in this role, I think the first thing for me was really assessing what was happening. Um, what were the employees saying? What's the CEO saying? Where
Yeah.
does he want to go? Where are we currently? Where are the gaps?
Uh-huh.
I'm a big believer in building the foundation,
Yeah.
which is really where I spent most of my year and 9 months with CPR is after understanding where the gaps are, what people are looking for, where are we going with our vision,
Yeah.
what things do we need to have in place to make sure that we are able to get there and also sustain what we have in place. So those are, I think, some of the starting components, and that's really how I start to connect how we establish our goals. So my goals, based off of what I see and what we need to develop for that bigger picture,
Yeah.
that's going to be my goal. And that's how I communicate, how I help my employees um, envision what their goals should be. And, I
Right.
like that to be a collaborative process. So I'll say this is the vision
Wonderful.
for the HR team based off of the bigger picture. These are your roles and responsibilities. Go and tell me what do your goals look like, and let's make sure that we're in sync once you bring those back. And
Yeah.
so that's really how we stay in sync. And then also identifying, it's really important for me to identify what does it mean. Now we have those goals established. What does success and going beyond success look like?
Yeah.
So they have something to strive for just beyond just the status quo of doing the day-to-day job too. And reevaluate now on a regular basis. I think sometimes I get a lot of leaders that think once you have a goal in place, you can't touch it, you can't change it.
Yeah.
But things around us are changing all the time.
Yeah.
So if something changes, we need to revisit that and restructure it in a way. The goal is to make it to put those
Yeah.
goals in place to be successful.
Yeah.
And so if we can do that, let's do that. But that's really, I think, some of the beginning steps that I try to put in place and use with my team and my staff from an HR perspective to help us support the organization as a whole.
Yeah. No,
What
that's
about from a
great.
LaToya perspective? What do you do to have yourself working in peak performance? Self-care, habits, goals, personal. I work out every morning. I definitely have a routine. I am definitely an old dog with the same tricks, but I find I work at peak performance when I know there's no surprises in the routine that I hold. Do you have
Yeah,
any kind of idiosyncrasies like that you
I
like to
definitely
follow or
do.
think? Oh, good.
So,
Share 'em, please.
Scott, first things first, what I do know about myself is I definitely have to have sleep. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
if I don't have it, you do not want to see me if I'm sleeping. It's not a
Okay.
cute picture. That, um, I think, I'm definitely a foodie, but having and maintaining a healthy diet has helped
Yeah.
me a lot, along with
Yeah.
the sleep. And this is a big one for me, and I, definitely try to continue to advocate for my organization. Time off is time off, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
I set that
Good.
expectation for myself. I make sure that my team sets that expectation for them. Even when things are going on and we feel like we can't find time, I push them to make sure that they find time to take time off and vacations and disconnect. I know
Yeah.
my boss doesn't always like this, but when I'm off, I do not want to be bothered. I
Yeah.
That's
need
right.
that time to, come down and be
Recharge.
recharge. I
Yeah.
really do. And
Yeah.
if I don't get it over eventually I start to be I disgruntled and
Yeah.
disengaged
Yeah.
and I'm not showing up to be my best self at that point in time. I'm not going to be
And you're
valuable to you.
reactive
Yeah.
and
Yes.
reactive instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
proactive.
Yeah.
Well, our alignments are so similar. I did a whole chapter on self-care, and I'm a foodie. I am a
Yeah.
foodie. But boy,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, get the sugar into me and I start to get a little crazy and then miss a little sleep. And then God forbid
It's
I put
all
my
over.
toothbrush in the wrong spot. It's all over.
Right. It's all over.
It's all
That's right.
over.
Then
I
the
will say
OCD
though,
kicks in.
I will say though, every Friday I try to treat myself to an ice cream cone. So
Good
that's
for
one thing I
Okay.
you.
do.
Yeah.
I love ice cream.
That's
So
good.
that's my treat on Fridays.
You
Yeah.
got to have
That's
those. You got to
smart.
reward yourself once in a while.
Yeah.
So, no.
Yeah.
I had a date with my wife today. We went to lunch. We try and once a week get a couple hours off the grid. We work together. We raised 3 kids together. We've been married for 23 years. We've dated for 5. There's a lot of Scott and Caitlin,
Yes.
but we also spread ourselves thin. So we try and have a date each week that gives us
Yeah.
just, phones stay in the car. We're going to go connect for a couple
Yes.
hours. It's lunch. It's, not date night. It's not dinner. It's not responsibility. It's just let's go have lunch. And so today I was sitting there and I'm like, I'm a little cranky. I don't really want to be here today. I'm a little, and she said, what's wrong with you today? I go, I haven't worked out in 4 days. And
That's
so
Oh,
key.
yeah.
Yes.
one of the big things for me is I've got to go get that testosterone push or that
Yeah.
energy out of
Yep.
me.
Yeah.
Just because I run hot and I run high, it brings me back down to a normal level to be in a little bit of pain from a workout.
Yeah. I
But I
Yeah.
and I
share that. I'm
agree
like,
with that. I agree with that.
yeah,
I like to weight lift, so I definitely keep that in my rotation too. But also getting back to what you enjoy from, arts and crafts is something I enjoy. Like I'm a DIYer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
okay.
while it might seem like that doesn't sound fun, it doesn't sound exciting,
Yeah.
that's where I get my joy. So I'll go
Awesome.
and do that.
Recharge.
Yeah.
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 No, it's important. You got to find those little things. They're so critical. Well, I have
Um,
loved spending
yeah.
time with you today. We always like to end our show with 3 questions.
Yeah.
And so, so the first one is, what 3 books would you recommend to our audience and why those books?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, I'll be sure to send you one
Yeah.
so you can answer this because I do the shameless
Yes.
plug again.
Shameless plug, Scott. Always adding that to the list.
We'll have you
so.
back. Just kidding. I'm just
I would
kidding.
I definitely want to get your book and read that and also be able to pass it along too.
Thank you.
Let's see. One book, The Mysteries, is it called The Mysteries of the Unnamed Midwife? I believe that's the name
Okay.
of the book.
Yeah.
I cannot for the life of me remember the author's name, Meg something.
Yeah.
So I try to mix my books up with something that is going to help me professionally, something tied to kind of work that I do, and then something fun, just
Oh, I
something
like
I want
that.
to read. Right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And so this is the something I want to read. And so this book is the book was, when I read it, it was very interesting. It's about um, a fever that takes over the world and wipes everyone out, all the women and children out
Oh,
specifically.
interesting.
And there's this one midwife that survives this fever, and she finds herself on a journey. And on her journey, she runs into the very few women and children that have been left, and they are up against trying to keep their freedom because all that's left on the earth are men, and they're trying to take over the few women that are left to actually try to continue to populate the world, which they cannot do. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting dynamic. It's almost like the HBO show. I forgot that show that just concluded
Oh, The
about.
Last of Us?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
similar to
Yeah,
that to
yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
that's
it's
fascinating.
a very cool book. I just finished reading a book, Manal Bayapa, and the book
Okay.
is called Equity.
Oh.
I enjoyed this book. This was a book that was provided to me by Minal. Um, I went through an executive coaching class for diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Mhm.
and through that, we read the book in addition to the lessons and discussions we had, and I felt that was very valuable. And some of the things that are in that book, I'm actually putting in place with my organization today. So I
That's
thought that was
cool.
helpful.
Yeah.
Um, Gosh, you said 3?
Yeah.
We can do 2. We can do 2.
Yeah. I feel like my brain went blank. I'm
Right.
That's all
blanking.
No,
right.
that's okay. Well,
That's all
Yeah.
are
right.
you
2 is
a
good.
podcaster, LaToya?
I do
So
podcasts.
what other what 3 podcasts do you recommend that you're listening to these days?
One that I definitely want to highlight, and not just because I'm with CPR, but I really love this podcast, and I was actually connected to it before I got with CPR. But it's called Back from Broken.
Okay.
It's one of our hosts at Colorado Public Radio. It's about individuals who have kind of went and overcome major obstacles related to framed around kind of recovery. So any type of
Okay.
recovery,
Yeah.
whether it be addiction to drugs, alcohol, recovery in general, and how
Mhm.
they have experienced that situation and came out on the other side of it. So um, I love the stories
Nice.
because there is a little bit of heartbreak in the stories, but it's
Mhm.
also a little bit of triumph at the end as well. So I think it's a good balance. So that's
Oh,
one of the podcasts that I look forward to every year.
gotcha.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice.
let's see here. Let me think. There's a colleague that I had at the city that also has a podcast. It's called One Small Change.
Okay.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
Yes, and it was developed. He developed it with a few other individuals, and it's basically a podcast that tells what he calls it ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Oh, I like that.
Um, yeah, and so it's it could be some hard conversations and
Mhm.
stories to hear about at the beginning. I guess similar to Back from
Yeah.
Broken, but um, a lot of the twist of this is how they are using their previous experience of life to actually enhance their life moving forward in their
Oh,
professional
I like that.
from a
Nice.
professional perspective and also just a personal perspective, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, that
Yeah,
does.
Um,
they're intertwined. They're intertwined.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great.
so those are 2 that I really
Those
love,
are
and there's one
great.
that's called Therapy for Black Girls. It's just a podcast about therapy, coaching and development, growth, that I stay connected to just enhance myself as an individual, a Black woman,
Yeah, yeah.
and something that I appreciate.
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
Those are great. So last question is what's one question you wish we'd asked you and how would you have answered it?
Mm.
Linda's doing that to you, not me.
Yeah, Linda. Wow. Let's see here.
I'm your friend. I don't know what she's doing to you.
That's a great question. Let me think about that. Let's see. One question I wish you would have asked me. Maybe a good question is, what if I was to leave the earth now, what would I want to be remembered by?
Ooh, I like that one. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
So, how would you have answered that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's see here. I think I would want to be remembered for being honest, fair, respectful, but straightforward. I don't feel like I sugarcoat. I would also want to be known for always offering a helping hand,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, that's how I would say that.
I like
that's
that. That's
beautiful.
Yeah.
fantastic. And it's a good way to close things out. So, yeah,
Yeah.
well, I want to thank our audience for joining us on this episode, and to thank our guest LaToya and my
Thank you, LaToya.
my
Thank
co-host
you.
Scott. And thanks everyone for joining us. We hope we'll be back again soon, and with more incredible guests like LaToya. We hope you enjoyed this episode of An Unconventional Guide to Success. If you want to learn more about LaToya Linzey, you can follow her on LinkedIn. Her profile is in the show notes. And to learn more about Colorado Public Radio, check out their website at www.cpr.org. An Unconventional Guide to Success is an inspirational, motivated series hosted by Scott Montgomery and Linda Misegadis, recorded on Riverside.fm. Music, editing, and production by Logan Misegadis. Check out Scott Montgomery's new book, How Did You Get Here, and all the helpful related materials at www.howdidyougethere.com. Thank you for joining us on our journey. If you would like to reach out to us, our contact information is in the show notes.